Thank you very much. We will proceed now, and we will hear Mr. Richard Falk as the president of the Gaza Tribunal, as I said, a man who showed us the way and led us through.
Welcome to all that are here. It's difficult to speak after such moving words from the jury of conscience that powerfully communicates the essential mission of justice that brought this Gaza Tribunal into being in the first place. And we want to underscore, above all, that this undertaking, from its very beginning, was inspired by the Palestinian heroic struggle of resilience and resistance. And we want to say that our efforts are dedicated not only to those that have survived in the wasteland that is Gaza today, but also those Palestinians everywhere in the world, and particularly in the refugee camps, that have indirectly been suffering all these years. We dedicate the tribunal and its undertaking to the memory of those who have died and to the struggle and well-being and victory of those who have survived. Let me try to thank some of those that have made this tribunal a reality, which took many months of commitment and imaginative work on the part of people around the world, as well as here in Istanbul, that provided the nerve center of our efforts. And first of all, I would thank the rector of this historic University of Istanbul for providing us with these auspices that are as impressive as any academic institution can hope to provide. And we're very grateful for that. And of course, I want to express special thanks to the jury of conscience that have done a remarkable performance under extreme time pressure and with a very complex set of issues to address. The jury findings read by Professor Chinkin in the final statement is a very comprehensive and remarkably clear enunciation of what we are attempting to promote and to achieve. And we're very grateful to all of the jury members for this extraordinary contribution to the work of the tribunal. And it will, I think, be something that will be always remembered as a glimmer of light in what has been a dark period in human history. Of course, I can't say enough words of admiration for the witnesses, the journalists, the experts that each have informed the proceedings and given it an emotional as well as a rational foundation in reality that only those that are living with their suppressed guilty conscience deny and seek to perpetuate the lies of state propaganda at a time when the crime of crimes has been committed and is continuing to induce this extreme situation of mass suffering. Many people in the Istanbul team that has handled the practical side of organizing a tribunal of this sort, and particularly this culminating session, have struggled without any kind of formal recognition, but with deep commitment to make this event a success. I also want to say that the group that has established an archive also deserves deep gratitude. Deep gratitude for the hard work of embracing the totality of these terrible realities that have occurred in dramatic form during the last 2 years, and in a deeply profound and profoundly disturbing form for over a century. And we shouldn't forget that the tragedy of the Palestinian people began not on October 7th, but a century and more earlier. We also are extremely thankful to We Witness TV for bringing to their channel and providing us here with some of the most powerful and tragic video representations of the suffering that has been endured. And I also want to thank the steering committee of the Gaza Tribunal that week after week has met and addressed all the issues that arise among people that are dedicated to a single cause but have differences in how best to achieve those results. I think the statement that we heard from the jury suggests that reality itself has transcended any kind of uncertainty about how to address the comprehensive challenges posed by this genocide. And we're thankful too to the Advisory Policy Council, which has many distinguished members, for associating themselves and lending legitimacy and some advice to our efforts. And of course, it would be irresponsible of me not to mention the formative role that my friend, His Excellency Taha Ahsan, has played in conjunction with the sponsoring group here in Istanbul and on behalf of the Islamic Cooperative Youth Forum, which has given us the material means and spiritual inspiration to engage in such an ambitious but humanly necessary undertaking. Because the tribunal had significant results by its prior session in Sarajevo and takes seriously the central recommendation that its work does not end with this final session here in Istanbul, that we prepared a complementary statement to that has flowed from the work of the jury of conscience, and is, without any prior consultation, is 100% compatible with what we have all heard with such appreciation a few minutes ago. And I present this statement, which is the work of the steering committee and of a number of dedicated members of it that participated in its formulation. The members of the Gaza Tribunal issued this statement at a historic moment of darkness, but in a continuing quest for the light of justice. The Gaza People's Tribunal recognizes that the current genocide in Palestine, rooted in a century of colonization and oppression, represents a watershed moment in the history of our world. If the Israeli perpetrators and their Western enablers are allowed to escape the imperatives of justice, and the Palestinians, survivors, are left without meaningful redress and ultimately their full liberation from the dehumanizing shackles of Zionism and colonialism, the world will have ratified one of the worst atrocities in history. The tribunal notes that if colonialism, apartheid, genocide are not moral red lines, then there are no red lines, and the world that presages will be a world of unprecedented horror. Every member of the human family has a stake in Palestinian justice. Cognizant of this, the Gaza People's Tribunal was established in London in November 2024 as a people's tribunal in the tradition of the Russell Tribunal that was established at the height of US aggression in Vietnam. It convened, the Gaza Tribunal convened public hearings in Sarajevo in May 2025, adopting the historic Sarajevo Declaration as a statement of the principles of the tribunal and of the global quest for justice in Palestine, and take satisfaction from the fact that the Sarajevo Declaration was affirmed by the jury of conscience and by the public reception it has received since its release. Its work over the past year has consisted of the collection of information and analysis, the hearing of witnesses and survivors, the archiving of evidence, and the issuing of appeals to humanity for action to end the genocide and to secure justice for the Palestinian people. Its convening here in Istanbul has brought together members of the tribunal, witnesses, survivors, experts, and an internationally distinguished jury of conscience to issue a moral judgment on the crimes of the Israeli regime and those complicit in their perpetration, and to set the course for the next phase of the quest for justice in Palestine. The members of the Gaza Tribunal welcome the findings of the jury of conscience, as already suggested, applaud their moral clarity, and compliment their capacity to produce this extraordinary document and commitment to the struggle to see their implementation of recommendations in full. The accelerated genocide of the past 2 years has shocked the conscience of humanity. The images of an audacious cruelty are forever seared in the minds of decent people everywhere. and the echoes of the cries of its victims will forever ring in our ears. We will forget none of it. The brutal attacks on an imprisoned civilian population, the intentional infliction of hunger, thirst, and disease as weapons of genocide, the targeting of bullets and bombs and drones at innocents, the targeting of bullets and bombs and drones accompanied by mass arrests and imprisonment in notorious, dangerous, in dangerous and cruel dungeons, the systematic hearings, systematic beatings and torture and sexual violence of the genocidal perpetrators, and the sniping of toddlers, infants for sport, the systematic destruction of hospitals, schools, churches, mosques, homes, refugee shelters and facilities, agricultural fields, food stores, even cemeteries, and the deliberate targeting of civilian truth tellers, journalists, medical personnel, aid workers, and other protected persons. So too will we remember the arrogant, genocidal threats and declarations of the perpetrators and their cruel laughter and public celebration of their crimes, all recorded forever in a catalog of transparent shame. We warn the world today that the genocide in Palestine has not ended. The Israeli regime continues to murder Palestinians in Gaza with its Western-supplied bullets and bombs. It continues to obstruct the delivery of food and medicine to the survivors. It continues to impose its unlawful siege on the survivors. Its 2-year systematic imposition of hunger, disease, injury, the plaguing of all of Gaza with toxic chemicals and explosive ordnance, its destruction of most sheltered, as well as the infliction of mass mental disorder and impaired development capacities for surviving civilians, will all continue to claim victims of the genocide for years to come. Even as the genocide continues to bleed the Israeli regime, has extended the annihilation phase of the genocide to the West Bank, where land and livelihoods and lives are claimed every day in the ethnic cleansing and racist assaults of the Israeli army and its violent settlers. Nor do the colonial maneuvers reflected in the so-called Trump plan or in the New York Declaration plan offer any hope for an end to the genocide or for freedom or justice for Palestine. Even as we welcome any ceasefire, we note that the Israeli regime has continued to violate with impunity the current declared cessation of violence by the daily killings of Palestinians and the continued obstruction of humanitarian aid. We reject the provisions of both plans that would violate fundamental Palestinian rights of self-determination the essential elements of which are agency, sovereignty, authentic representation, and unified leadership. The proposed plans presuppose impunity for Israeli genocide and apartheid, normalize the Israeli regime, ignore the rights of the Palestinian people under international law, and impose proxy occupation and colonial control over the victims of genocide, while doing nothing to rein in the perpetrators and accomplices of genocide. Palestinians must lead the restoration of Gaza, and Israel and its enablers must be held responsible for all reparations. We demand accountability for the perpetrators and their complicit enablers, redress for the victims and survivors, action to address the root causes of Zionist colonization, occupation, and apartheid, rejection of all efforts to normalize the perpetrator regime and its criminal acts, and freedom for Palestine. In sum, we demand justice, and to these ends, we call on people of conscience everywhere to intensify their efforts to secure justice for the Palestinian people through increased and coordinating efforts to isolate the Israeli regime even further than it is now isolated as a pariah state, reject its normalization, and to hold it to account through boycotts, divestment, sanctions, military embargoes, criminal prosecutions of perpetrators and complicit actors, civil actions against those benefiting from harms, education of our neighbors, public protest, and civil disobedience, and the amplification of calls for the liberation and freedom of Palestine now and in the future. Thank you very much. Should I go back to the...